Let's talk ever so quickly about a philosophical concept in science, which is perception. Now, science is ultimately based on observations. And observations are not just done with our senses, but they're also done with instruments. And a lot of times what we find is that there's scientific process is made primarily because of improvements to instruments. So one of the classic examples is the case of Galileo. A lot of times we think that Galileo discovered something new, and he did have some good scientific contributions. However, the number one most important thing that he did was he helped to improve the telescope. Other people were working on telescopes. Someone else had actually made telescope before him, but he made some improvements that allowed it to be even better than it was before. And that is his truest contribution to science. Now, in this course, we're going to be looking at some of the historical background of science, and we'll talk a little bit more about Galileo. So let's just leave that aside for the moment. But an important thing is that our ability to see and our ability to measure is the most important aspect in terms of improving science. And one of the really interesting things that separates modern science from older scientific endeavors is the idea that we're not going to trust our own perceptions. When we find something, when we observe something, we're going to document that, we're going to publish those findings, and we're going to allow other people to examine our findings. So if you take a look at what Aristotle did way, way back thousands of years ago, kind of the father of science, he saw things and he wrote them down. But what he didn't do was then take those things and send them to the next town over and say, hey, you scientist people over there, what do you think about this? Are you seeing these same things? Where am I wrong? And invite peer review. So that process of science in making observations, making findings, and then submitting them out into the world and saying, hey, critique this, see where I'm wrong, are you seeing the same thing, is one of the areas that really separates modern science from older science. And this is where we come into the idea of perception. So we as humans do not see the world as it is. We see the world as it has meaning to us. And one of the videos we're going to watch in this module is going to introduce that idea of meaning and illustrate how we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as it has meaning to us. Now, I'm not going to steal all of the thunder of that video. It's a great video. Watch it. Please, for the love of God, you paid for this course. Watch the video and read the things in the course. If you don't read them, you're not going to do well on the assignments. These assignments are easy if you read and watch the stuff you're supposed to. So do it. Do it now. All right, back to our story. So, we don't perceive the world as it is, we pursue the world as it has meaning to us, which means that we have to be aware of what it is we're looking for. So think back when you first became a nurse, when you first were learning how to be a nurse, and they told you to just observe someone else. And in health, they're like, just watch the other person and observe them. And you're like, okay, what am I supposed to notice? And then eventually, as you became better as a nurse, you started noticing all sorts of things. But when you go into a room, you have to wait, stop, assess the environment. We have a tendency sometimes to focus on the patient, and we don't observe the environment. And so unless you've made a conscious effort to, every time I go in a room, I'm going to wait, stop, observe the environment, assess the environment, then you're going to not have that skill. So it's an awareness that nurses develop over time as an intentional effort to, every time I go in a patient's room, I don't just say, what is the patient doing? I say, what is the environment like? What are the smells in the room? Is the room pleasant? Are there flowers? How old are the flowers? Are there family members? What are they doing? Where are all of the tubes going? All of those sorts of questions are things that an experienced nurse just kind of takes in, but it's because they've intentionally practiced and trained their mind to look for those things first. So when it comes to research and when it comes to science, there's a saying that we find what we measure. So if you have a measurement that measures something, well, you're going to find lots of that. So if you ask every patient who comes along, do you have pain? Guess what you're going to find an awful lot of? You're going to find an awful lot of pain. But the question is it meaningful pain? So a lot of you are familiar with the whole idea, the whole concept of pain is the fifth vital sign. And the whole idea there was that we were under-treating pain. But now there's a trend that says we weren't actually under-treating pain at all. What we're doing now is we're taking people who have some pain that is not meaningful to them, and we're bringing it to their conscious, and we're reinforcing that as an important part of their lives. And so with the biopsychosocial model of pain, yes, the pain was present, but it didn't significantly impact their quality of life. However, now that we are prompting them to think about it, we're drawing their attention to it, and now it's affecting them more strongly than it was before. And then we went ahead and we treated patients who might not have otherwise needed treatment for pain, and we gave them complications, anything from ulcers with NSAIDs to potentially death of various causes with opioids. And in the process, we may have created some addicts that we didn't necessarily need to. Now, the treatment of pain is not necessarily a cause of addiction, and so please don't take what I'm saying to say that we are causing a whole bunch of addicts. I don't think that's the correct message. But what I am saying is that by asking every single patient, do you have pain, you can actually create pain because you're looking for it, you're going to find it. So the important thing is that we have a tendency to find what we're looking for, and the things that we're not looking for, we aren't even aware they exist. Think of this for a moment. How many of you have ever gotten a new car? And then all of a sudden you noticed on the road that your model of car is everywhere. And you never even knew that model of car really you knew maybe that existed, but you didn't see it everywhere. But now that you own one, you see them all because suddenly you're aware of those things. And that's the idea that we're talking about, is that we are not neutral observers of the world. We are intentional observers of the world. And we intend to see certain things. Unfortunately, we have selective attention. It means that we lose the ability to see other things. So that's one of the reasons why it's so very, very important that we undergo peer review, because it reduces the chances that our own biased attention is what we're finding, and not what we're finding is the underlying reality. So that is one of the philosophical foundations of science, is that observations, perception, is not neutral, it is value laden. And you bring to your observations all of the baggage and all of the emotional being that you are.